Hey everyone, welcome back to Fandom Power. Of course, I'm your host, Wes R. Scott, and once again, well, actually, it's a little different today. I'm only joined by one half of my very own Rogue Squadron. It's Andrew Daw.
Yo.
Hurricane Fiona is hitting the east coast of Canada currently, and Hank, we know you're out there. We just checked in with you. We know you're okay, but for the sake of this recording, that is why we are only flying two men today.
Down one.
We are. Listen, if you are watching or listening to our show for the first time, welcome to Fandor. This one is our latest review series where over the course of the next 9 weeks, we're going to be breaking down every episode, each new episode of the new live action Star Wars television series Andor, currently streaming on Disney Plus. You can think of our show, if you will, like an annotated audiobook, I would say.
With a whole lot of cliff notes.
Yeah, exactly. Because just like our previous Star Wars review series, the breakdown, it's beat for beat, it's note for note, and we'll be talking through all the plot points, the Easter eggs, and of course, any of the greater Star Wars lore connections that we're able to identify as we move throughout the show. But before we get to the breakdown of episode 1, we need to talk about first impressions. Andy, what do you think?
So far, I hate to say it, but this is my least favorite Star Wars product so far.
You're not alone in that.
I'm not gonna final judge on it until I've seen the whole thing, but it did not hit the ground running for me.
I think this one was a hard pill to swallow. Recently, we spoke about showrunner Tony Gilroy, who wrote the show, who's created the show, talking about cynicism and fan service, and we kind of talked about what we thought that meant, and I think I have a much better understanding of where he was going with that now that we've seen the first 3 episodes.
I understand fan service, but in even the first episode, there's a couple opportunities he missed, and it's not even to deliver fan service, but
Right.
just to further emphasize what's going on within the galaxy.
I think part of the issue is that the reveals, as they were, they don't come in any sort of, there's not a giant exposition dump all at once to bring you up to speed. As I was saying earlier to Hank, we were chatting and I said, Andor is like an onion, and they are peeling the layers ever so thinly.
Yeah.
And it's like they're pulling a layer out from the middle before they pull the outer skin off. And to me, they seem like almost out of order sometimes.
Yeah, definitely cutting back and forth with the flashback piece. He is doing that, but I get why he's doing that because some of it mirrors present day. So
I'm going to talk about those flashbacks as we go through the breakdown because I think they're important in the sense that they address some topical issues that I don't think Star Wars has really addressed before, namely colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have a better understanding why, because I thought, oh my gosh, they're dropping 3 episodes. And at first I thought that dropping 3 episodes was sort of accounting for the delay in the release date. But after watching them, I realized that you almost need those 3 episodes because they work. I don't know if they work as well on their own. Like if you just gave me one episode, the first episode, I don't know if I would be as invested as I am having all 3, because to me, all 3 episodes kind of serve as a feature length prologue, if you will.
Yeah. Like Hank had said in the chat, is it too late to change it to Blandor?
Blandor. Discourse over the last few days has mimicked that. There's been a lot of wow, this is really slow. Seems to be the common line of thought throughout. And I'm not gonna lie, first time through. Now, granted, man, I was up at the crack of dawn watching this thing, and I was really, really tired when I watched it. So much so that on my second viewing, when I started to watch it through with the descriptive audio and the subtitles, I actually fell asleep as I was sort of going through my episode. Now, not feeling well, having had a few rough nights earlier in the week.
Could have affected it.
Yeah, maybe. But I've gotten through it a couple of times, and I've rewatched. Obviously, for the purpose of our show, I've rewatched it quite microscopically. And just like the other Star Wars TV series that we've reviewed, I am much more forgiving. And I'm not even, you know what? Forgiving is not the right word. I'm far more enthusiastic now that I've looked at it under the microscope, because even up till what? I don't know, midnight last night, I was still thinking really, really hard about the first 3 episodes. In fact, I sent a message to you guys in the chat about some thoughts that I had for episode 3, actually, 2 and 3. So
I like where you're going with that too.
yeah, me too. It makes things way more compelling. As we've said, everything in Star Wars is intentional, and we'll get to that later. Sticking with sort of just our general impressions, Cassian, wow. Is he the character that you know and remember from Rogue One?
Not yet. No, he's a rogue, he's a thief, and now I guess technically murderer.
I said, quote, that he is a morally bereft, grifting con man. But he's got this really shiny veneer.
Yes.
And, he's despicable, but he's like the lovable, despicable guy. I mean, the way that he talks, everybody that he talks to, I mean, certainly this man's a fast talker.
Mm-hmm.
But he's able to smooth things over and talk his way through a number of situations that really just leave you going, God, this guy is, dare I say, slimy?
Borderline.
All right. Do you want to get into the breakdown?
Let's go for it.
All right, let's do it. This one, it's episode 1 of Andor. Oh, interestingly enough, you brought this up yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't realize it either.
Yeah. At the time of release, all 3 episodes did not have a title. They were just episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But sometime, between Thursday and Friday?
Yeah, they shifted.
There was an update to the Disney Plus listing, and now each episode has a title. So episode 1, it's called Kassa. Of course, it aired with the other 2 episodes Wednesday, September 21st, 2022. This one, it's written by Tony Gilroy, who was, of course, the writer for the Rogue One screenplay. He did the screenplays for the first 4 Bourne movies, as well as directed the Bourne Legacy. That's the one with Jeremy Renner.
Yes.
And let's see, our director for this one, it's Toby Haynes. Now, he's done 4 episodes of the Amazon original show Utopia. He did the USS Callister episode of Black Mirror, as well as 4 episodes of Doctor Who between 2010 and 2011. So that's the Matt Smith run of Doctor Who. This episode, it's 34 minutes and 36 seconds without your titles and credits, or a much healthier 42 minutes if you watch it to the bitter end, which, by the way, I did, because I keep thinking, my God, one day, this is what Marvel has done to me. Marvel has made me stay to the bitter end of everything I watch now, in the anticipation that maybe there'll be a little teaser.
Well, funny you say that, because the last 2 episodes of She-Hulk have not had that teaser at the end.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen the latest one yet, so
It's all right.
I'll have to go check that out when we're done today.
One thing I did notice at the beginning of the credits, and it kind of threw me with the Tony Gilroy, is like, he's on there as writer, producer, executive producer,
show creator.
Like,
he's got a lot going on. And hats off to him. I gotta say, I do like what he's doing, and I overall do like the direction that the show is going. We're gonna get to that. All right, what have we got so far? We get, like with the other live action Star Wars series, we get that same metallic Star Wars title logo with all of the revolving character heads.
Yep.
And in keeping with the tradition of adding a new character for each show, we get a shot of our new droid. Of course, that's B2EMO. I kept wanting to call him Emo.
Well, they call him B in the show.
They do B for short, or some even I think there's a B2 reference there at one point. But I mean, this character gives me flavors of Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So Emo just seems so fitting there, because it's like there's a lot of like, oh, kind of moments for this character.
Design wise, he's kind of like a hybrid between BB-8 and your R2.
You know what I got out of this one? Black Hole vibes.
Yes.
Disney's Black Hole, like yes. Bob and not Vincent. What's the other floating the other R2D2 knockoff? Oh my god, the old miner talking guy. You know who I'm talking about.
I do.
That's really right down to the whole like head sort of off kilter and the retractable kind of head thing. Again, trash can design.
Trash can on wheels.
Yeah.
Makes it more simplistic to drive them around the set, though.
Yeah. I would say by far, I generally I don't talk about the titles a whole lot. This one, it's very beautiful with that eclipse in the back. That the title cards fold down to reveal sort of that eclipse becomes sort of a proto Rebel Alliance symbol. By far, this is the most beautiful title sequence, I think, of the of any of the shows.
Really, like, it's on the nose. Like, it's the dawning of the rebellion.
So true. Yeah. All right. So the episode crossfades, and we open and it's a rainy night on the planet Morlana 1, and we get our first look at title character Cassian Andor as he's walking across a long causeway. Some text fades in, and it reads, Morlana 1, Preox Morlana Corporate Zone, BBY 5. And that's pretty cool, because for the first time, we actually get an on-screen usage of the term BBY. Nice. I mean, we've been using this term on and off in Star Wars since, 1996?
Roughly.
BBY, of course, is a reference to before the Battle of Yavin, where the Battle of Yavin sort of counts as a year zero, as it were. That's sort of how we measure time. And it's really meant for us as the fans. But to have this reference come up on screen, that's kind of cool. It's a nice little nod to us, I think, as fans.
Fan service already.
Is that going to come up a lot? Fan service?
Maybe.
There are some fan service. I think there's some fan service moments. But again, we already had this discussion. What constitutes fan service? Are you a fan of Star Wars? Do you want to be serviced? Of course you do. You don't want to see Star Wars without Star Wars stuff.
I don't know. There's some people out there that might want to go get serviced in the next scene.
Fair enough. All right.
But we'll get there.
There's also another lore connection here besides the BBY thing. I want to talk about the Preox Morlana text, as we're going to come to find out over the course of the episode that Preox is this large corporation that kind of acts like the governing body of Morlana 1. And this kind of corporate governance, it goes all the way back to the original Han Solo trilogy of novels written by Brian Daley between 1979 and 1980. Those are Han Solo's Revenge, Han Solo at Star's End, and concluded the trilogy with Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. That setting would later get adapted and expanded for the Star Wars role-playing game in 1993 with Han Solo and the corporate sector. So in Star Wars Legends, the corporate sector was basically a region of space where corporations would set up shop to escape the bureaucracy of the Republic government. Eventually, they coalesced into their own sort of government, which was called the Corporate Sector Authority.
Go ahead. Kind of like Rick and Morty, to get away from the government, they became a government.
Again, I am so out of touch with Rick and Morty. I don't know the reference.
Oh, you got to watch that show.
Okay. During the reign of the Empire, the Emperor actually allowed the Corporate Sector Authority to retain their own system of governance as well as their own private security. But it was on the condition that several companies within the corporate sector authority did things for the greater good of the imperial citizenry. And that meant funneling a lot of credits to the imperial government, as well as raw materials and manufactured goods directly into the imperial military industrial complex. And I think we kind of see some of that within the show. So. In canon, things remain largely unchanged, except that the Empire viewed the corporate sector as a haven for former separatists. And around 18 BBY, just after the Clone Wars, Moff Tarkin, newly minted Moff Tarkin, invaded and occupied the salient system on the edge of the corporate sector to send a clear message to Defiant Star Systems and to establish a staging ground in case the Empire wanted to make further, into the corporate sector. It's not made expressly clear in this episode whether or not that this is a literal interpretation of the corporate sector, but the one thing that is clear is that the Preox company, as they kind of call themselves, at the very least has been contracted by the Empire to basically run this system for them. And of course, that does include their own private security force as well. Mm-hmm. So there you go. There's your biggest lore connection so far. Having crossed the causeway, Cassian makes his way down a set of stairs. Along the staircase, we see several transparent bubbles lining the sides of the street, each with a different alien inside that reacts to him as he passes by. Well, the scene is very reminiscent of the famous red light district of Amsterdam, where sex workers would dance in the windows of the brothels as people pass by outside. At the bottom of the staircase, Cassian crosses the street to enter a well-lit building. There are no windows, but there is a doorman who scans him while cautioning, no weapons, no comms, no credit, and no nonsense before letting him in.
Don't mess around.
Yeah, it tells him that the upstairs lounge is closed or something, but, he can go in. So typical, whatever, middle of the week night in your, I guess it'd be
local adult establishment,
blue light district, green light district. It's kind of blue-green, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, inside the establishment, Cassian pauses to look at a hollow dancer while an alien bartender offers him a drink. From across the bar, there are two uniformed men already seated, and they notice Cassian's interest in the bartender, and one of them says, don't even think about it, adding that the bartender would only send him home crying. Cassian, of course, ignores the two men, and he just turns and watches the hollow dancer.
This is my first missed opportunity.
In what sense?
In that rather than the alien they chose, I see no reason why that couldn't have been a random Twi'lek.
Maybe that was the, going back to the fan service thing. Maybe that's kind of what Tony Gilroy was getting at. Like that there's a subversion there that we expected it to be a Twi'lek.
Yeah.
So having it be some other species is like, oh.
I guess they're not all limited to sex slaves. Others have been brought in as well. Well, mind you, what she says next kind of gives the implication that they come and go of their free will, but
again, though, I mean, if we're patterning this section of the episode on Amsterdam, I mean, the legal sex trade in Holland is kind of like that.
Yeah.
All right, some details about our bartender here. This is Caroline Green. Now, you may not recognize her immediately, but we saw her in The Last Jedi during the Canto Bight sequence, where she played a character by the name of Santara Rasad. More interestingly, though, she is Gal Gadot's stand-in.
Really?
Yeah, she stood in for her on both Wonder Woman films as well as Justice League. All right. Next up, we've got the two uniformed guys. The first guy, the bigger guy who does the talking. This is a character by the name of Kravis. He's played by Lee Boardman, who appeared in the miniseries Rome, where he played Timon. He also played Badger in Jack the Giant Slayer,
nice.
As well as Amerigo Vespucci in Da Vinci's Demons.
Don't believe I've seen that one.
Lee Boardman has also done a ton of voice work in video games. Thematically speaking, if you look through his list of credits, you'll see sort of this like similar themes coming up. Tough guy.
Well, it rolls here.
His partner is a character by the name of Verlo. This character is played by Stephen White. Stephen White appeared as Reggie Weller in Highlander: The Source, a movie that I think we all kind of forgot about.
I definitely forgot about that one.
Some of us probably tried to, erase it from our from our collective consciousness where Highlander is concerned. We pick on Highlander a lot on this show.
A little bit.
It's easy to do. He also appeared in the BBC series The Great Outdoors, where he played a character by the name of Joe. And he has the coveted name of Guy. Guy in Men in Black International. Now, I don't know if that's like generic guy, like dude with sandwich. Like some of the strange credits that they give some of these people.
Well, they definitely elevated the title of Guy with that Ryan Reynolds movie, though.
Free Guy. Yeah. All right. A moment later, a madam. Actually, she's referred to as the hostess in the credits, but for the purposes of our show, I shall refer to her as the madam because, let's face it, that's really what she is.
Yeah.
The madam enters the bar room from a back chamber and approaches Cassian and begins to make some small talk. She asks him if he's alone tonight and if he's been here before. When he tells her that it's his first time, she says that he's picked a good night because it's quiet. Now, from across the bar, Kravis interrupts the conversation. Now, he's clearly agitated as he tells the madam that they were there first. Trying to defuse the situation, the madam tells him that another lady will help them, but Kravis says that he doesn't care or want the other woman. The madam gives him a stern look as she tells him, behave. Cassian snickers at the admonishment leveled at the two men, and Kravis sarcastically retorts, oh, she's funny, ain't she?
Can't be messing around in there.
Our hostess, as she's credited with, that's Margaret Clooney.
Nice.
Margaret Clooney appeared as the receptionist number 2 in Johnny English Reborn. She also played Harriet, the Duchess of Sutherland, in the Victoria film, as well as Shower Sarah in Last Christmas. Last Christmas, Christmas movie, recent Christmas movie, actually, with, oh my Lord, Game of Thrones, Queen of Dragons.
Still haven't caught up on it.
Terminator, Emilia Clarke. Thank you very much. Brain is working. Emilia Clarke. Now, the madam, turning back to Cassian, apologizes for the interruption, and he tells her that she should take care of them. When she says why, he reminds her that it's a company town. Making a reference to that corporate thing again. Mm-hmm. Dismissively, she says, well, they're just sentry guards. And for a brief moment, her facade of pleasant demeanor cracks, and she kind of lets it slip. Well, they just like to play cops, and adding that it's really annoying. Then getting back to the matter at hand, she asks Cassian if he's looking for something special. And he tells her that a friend of his told him that a girl from Canary was working in this brothel. The madam says she's familiar with the planet and asks why he's looking for this girl. She wonders aloud if he's feeling nostalgic and looking for an old girlfriend. But Cassian says, I don't have a girlfriend. So the madam excuses herself to go to the back room and check on the girl that he's asking about. That veneer I was talking about, how he's able to just sort of smooth talk his way through. This is a great example of that.
Yep.
Now, with the madam gone, the visibly agitated Kravis glares at Cassian, and the two men lock glances for a moment. And the guard asks, is there something amusing? Not fazed by the big man, Cassian takes a sip from his drink as he says, definitely not, before setting it down on the bar, all the while never breaking eye contact with Kravis. As Cassian stares unfazed at the two men, Kravis shoots a snarky remark. Oh, that's a hard look for a little thing like you. Verlo rhetorically adding, he's not laughing now, is he?
They definitely have that abuse of power vibe.
You do get that sense, eh? Yeah. Like, abuse of authority. It's there in spades. Yeah. We're going to see that exercised even more here very shortly. Returning from the back room, the madam tells Cassian that there was a girl from Canary working there, but she's left several months earlier. She does offer him another choice of girl from the planet Tahina, saying that the girl from Tahina has the same large dark eyes that he might be looking for. Is there an implication here that people from Canary and Tahina commonly have similar dark features?
Maybe.
I don't know. I should also note that I could not find any references to either Canary or Tahina. So I guess these are both new planets that are being introduced right here in Andor for the first time.
Mm-hmm. It is funny, though, that she's describing them like having exclusive features.
Yeah.
When later on in episode 3, they're just, random human.
Oh, yeah.
So
they're actually in this episode, they make a point to say Canary human. The idea that humans are are spread across the galaxy,
slightly different per planet.
Well, and this is another thing, another Legends thing we talk about, especially in the role-playing game. There's humans, and then there's what's called near humans, and in a lot of cases, I guess the short version is near humans essentially are human in most respects, save for minor trait differences that make them adapted to whatever environment that they live in, whether it's skin tones or maybe they breathe a different nitrogen oxygen mix or whatever, but just minor changes. Yeah. Right. Okay, well, Cassian presses the madam, asking if she knows where the Canary girl went. And in response, the madam drops the pleasantries and plainly says, "What are you? Seriously? Boyfriend? Husband?" Cassian shoots a quick glance around the room before he breaks into a whisper, telling the madam, "I'm looking for my sister." The madam tells him plainly that people come and go and that whoever the girl is, she's gone. And turning to walk away, she suggests to Cassian that he should leave. But as she tries to walk away, Cassian stops her with one last question. What was her name? But the madam just stares at him incredulously and retorts, "No one here uses their name," before leaving Cassian staring at the floor in despair.
Makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I mean,
you wouldn't want to.
You've just
like a stage name,
right? Yeah, exactly. It's like going to a stripper. You ever talk to a stripper? Now on the pole, Candy. I'm sure her name is really Candy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, leaving the brothel the same way that he came in, Cassian trudges back out into the rain, and it's not too long before he's set upon by Kravis and Verlo.
I guess they didn't want to wait around to be serviced.
No, it's obvious that the two men have followed him, intending to use their corporate authority to intimidate him.
Yeah.
As they approach him from behind, they call out to stop, demanding to see his company ID. Getting closer, they continue threatening him with parking fines and a visitor's curfew. When Cassian finally stops, Kravis pulls a blaster, demanding to see his ID. While raising his hands over top of his head, Cassian tells the corpos, as they are called, that he has 300 credits in his coat pocket. Laughing, Kravis remarks, "What a coincidence. That's almost exactly what it will take to cover the fine, the towing charges, and their personal processing fee." When they demand Cassian to produce the credits, he tells them that he's not moving. They can take the credits from his pocket and then he'll walk away, adding that he doesn't need any surprises.
It's kind of telling for the current state of the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you come get me. I'm not moving.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, guy, who, goes to pull his wallet out and gets shot because, the police think he's reaching for, something. Yeah, exactly. So again, this is just one more example of ways that this show is addressing real world, topical issues, really that no other Star Wars property has really looked at. So it's very grounded in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Kravis moves forward and presses the barrel of his weapon against the back of Cassian's head. We see Cassian wince, like, whoa, like shit just got real, right? At the same time, Kravis directs his partner Verlo to retrieve the credits. The smaller man approaches Cassian, pulls down his hood, and begins patting him down. And just for good measure, Kravis pistol whips him just because he can.
Mm-hmm. More of that abuse.
Big time. When Verlo comes up empty-handed, Cassian tells him that the money is in his other pocket. And when Verlo crosses Cassian's back, Cassian throws his head back really, really hard, striking Verlo in the face, which knocks him down and out. Reactively, Kravis pulls the trigger, but Cassian was able to get a hand on his arm and push the blaster away before the gun went off, and the shot misses wildly. The two men then struggle for control of the blaster until Cassian throat punches Kravis, I might add, and then tackles him to the ground, almost like the spear. Like visions of Bill Goldberg there for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Following to the ground, Cassian slams Kravis's hand off the pavement until he can no longer hold the blaster and finally lets go. Scrambling for the blaster and to get to his feet, Cassian turns the tide, shouting at Kravis, "Tell me now! Tell me what to do! Let's hear it, boss!" With his own gun now pointed directly at his face, Kravis does what every bully does in his position and cowers in fear.
Flips so fast.
Yeah, talk about flip the script.
Yep. Please don't hurt me.
We're at a point here in the episode where, as I like to say, decisions were made.
Yes.
And this, all of the fast talk, con man stuff aside, I think that this is a new situation for Cassian. I don't think he's been, it's implied that he's been in
his fair share of fights.
Trouble.
Yeah. Even outnumbered. The way he handles that.
I'm sure he spent a few nights in the drunk tank or, minor charges, but I mean,
because they do go on to say that he's got an imperial record.
Oh yeah, absolutely he does. Well, Cassian orders the man to get himself and his partner to their feet. And when Kravis rolls Verlo's limp body on his back, the man's unblinking 1,000-yard stare is a revelation to both of them. Kravis tells Cassian that Verlo isn't breathing. Cassian accuses him of faking, but Kravis, full of anguish, showed he's not. And it's more than convincing.
It's one hell of a headbutt.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, did the headbutt kill him, or did the hitting his head off the ground
or something?
Yeah, who knows? We don't see that.
Yeah.
Kind of perfect storm may break the bridge of his nose. Mind you, I mean, his face looks pretty good considering he just got, smoshed.
Mm. But he's at a point now, this is the decision.
Oh yeah.
It just escalated from back alley fight to pivotal moment.
Yeah, the crux that will forever change the trajectory of this guy's life, really.
Yeah.
Cassian stares blankly at the dead man while Kravis sneers up at him. "You killed him." But Kravis quickly changes his demeanor and his tone as he looks up very submissively, and he spits out a plausible story of how Cassian didn't mean it. That if they stick together, the two of them can convince the authorities that it was a misunderstanding and that Verlo fell hitting his own head. Well, as the big man kneels before Cassian, pleading with him to use the story, Cassian makes a very different choice and ends up shooting him point blank in the face.
Yeah, I think he made the right choice, though. Considering how quick he flipped, it would not shock me if he just reflipped again.
I agree, especially when
you can't trust the guy.
We get a little bit more sort of insight into who Kravis is later on in the episode about sort of his career path, as it were.
Yeah.
And it's, not surprising that, sure, given a chance to reclaim his weapon, and even if he didn't, I'm sure there would have been some kind of I'm gonna get you down the road. I mean, this is visions of Rogue One when Cassian meets that informant at the beginning. Within the first 5 minutes of meeting the character, he does exactly the same thing. He murders a guy.
Yeah.
Very different reasons for doing so, but how was it so? You wonder how was it so easy for this guy who's supposed to be a member of the Rebel Alliance to just murder Joe Bob nobody?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe this is where it started.
Not his first rodeo.
No, absolutely not.
And like, really, I mean, it goes against the Batman theory where, the criminals just, put them away in Arkham. They keep coming back. This eliminates him from coming back.
That's true.
So this is one less guy he has to watch over his shoulder for.
That's true. Painting that picture of morally questionable, I mean, Star Wars has long sort of presented a black and white kind of good guys wear white hats. I mean, the Empire, well, stormtroopers wear white, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Vader, the big bad of the original trilogy, dude dressed in black.
Even down to Luke when he's all in black, but has a little white flap that shows.
Sure.
Just to reinforce it. But then there's Han Solo.
Yeah, shades of gray.
Yeah.
Mind you, we didn't see Han Solo murder anybody.
Except Greedo.
Okay, well, there is that. Mind you.
Han shot first.
Under duress, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of glorified, though. This is a much more gritty take on the whole,
Yeah.
I mean, Cassian shot first. There's no question of that.
Pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. But Han Solo was always sort of depicted as this, like, he's rough around the edges, but still has that
heart of gold.
Yeah, the golden heart thing. Cassian, not so much, I don't think. Well, for a moment, Cassian paces back and forth, his mind racing. He's not really sure what to do. And then we cut to a scene. It's the causeway, and Cassian is running for it, running back across the causeway, not stopping as he looks over his shoulder to see if he's being followed. We cut to a starship as it lifts off and departs Morlana 1. And as the ship leaves orbit, we can see that Morlana 1 has at least one moon. All right. You know me. I'm a starship guy. I love ships. Best I can tell, this is a new class of starship, and I'm not even sure that this is a factory.
Could be a custom built.
I would hazard a guess to say that it is almost certainly cobbled together from other ships. Couldn't find anything on this, but it's definitely what I would say a Frankenship cobbled together from other ship parts. We see these. Let's push this ahead here. What looks like Y-wing engines sort of on it. The thing's got 4 engines. The canopy is reminiscent of the Legends ship Jaster's Legacy. I've talked about Jaster's Legacy before. We've talked about that as maybe being sort of inspiration for the Razor Crest. But again, it's got that same sort of swept up hull, like a boat-shaped hull, like maybe it was almost amphibious. Of course, it's much flatter than that in this case. And of course, the 4 engines, which look like 2 of them anyway, look like they've been borrowed from a Y-wing, even if they've been maybe shortened just a little bit. I will say this. If this is an actual like purpose-built ship, like it was built, this is the way it rolled off the assembly line, I'm going to propose that it is in the same family as the Y-wings. It has some similar features. Although it is significantly wider, maybe it was like a
Y-wing RV,
like a troop transport, maybe, or maybe even like a modified pleasure craft of some kind. Anyway, we're not sure. I hope we get to see more of it. We do get to see it again once more in this episode. I hope we see more of it later on, or other cool looking weird ships. All right, we cut to the surface of the planet Pharynx. This one is another planet within the Morlana system. And unlike Morlana 1, Pharynx is in what is designated as the free trade sector. A small red droid resembling a trash can trundles through the streets of Pharynx City in the early morning dawn. It's B2EMO, or B for short, as we've already established. Off to the side, you can see what appears to be a lug beast sleeping against a building. Lug beast, if you don't remember, first appeared in The Force Awakens. It was being ridden by Tito, the character that tried to net BB-8. If you remember that scene. This is a really cool thing. B2EMO, voiced by veteran puppeteer Dave Chapman. Dave Chapman was the puppeteer who actually was BB-8 throughout the sequel trilogy.
There you go.
Other credits include Lady Proxima and the physical part of Rio Durant from Solo: A Star Wars Story, as well as the Emperor and Ordon in the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
Nice.
So yeah, he's been around creatures for a long time.
I desperately want another season of that one.
Sadly, it's not. Yeah, unfortunately, it was really good. 3 Carillion hounds rush at B from down the street, and he collapses his body, drawing in his 4 little limbs into what I've described as a defensive posture. 2 of the hounds run right past, while the third one stops to relieve itself on the little droid. But B deploys an arc welder, driving it off much in the same way that R2-D2 did with Salacious Crumb back in Jabba's palace. Carillion hounds, by the way, we saw those before. They were introduced to us in Solo, where Moloch used a pair of them tracking Han and Kira in the spaceport.
To be fair, he does look like a bit of a fire hydrant. In that
is red. Mode. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Of course he does. Fun fact: the look of the Carillion hound was inspired by the death dogs from Willow. Yeah. Cutting to a scrapyard, very reminiscent of the one that we saw back in Jedi Fallen Order and in the Bad Batch, the planet Braca, actually. We see B slowly making his way down a cleared path towards the remains of a scrapped transport. The scrapyard appears to be to stretch for several hundred meters, if not for kilometers. And looming in the background is what's left of a Venator-class Star Destroyer turned up on its edge. And thanks to some concept art from the show, we can confirm for sure that that is 100% a Venator. I knew it was a ship of some kind. At first, I thought it was a Confederate ship because I didn't think it was turned up on its side. I actually thought it was like Grievous's cruiser, how the engines kind of have that staggered step up kind of look. But yeah, if you turn a Venator on its edge, and I've put one up here on the screen to you can sort of see the lines, and I've traced the outline there. The CGI model there doesn't line up 100%, but again,
they've stripped parts off.
Absolutely,
they're constantly stripping these things.
Plus, there's the whatever racking system that it's actually cradled on. Interesting way to break apart a ship, though. I mean, that is a big difference from what we saw in the other presentations. We didn't see them turned up like that. They were basically landed or crashed, and then crews just started cutting them up. All right, so trundling inside the wrecked transport, B finds Cassian fast asleep on a bench. Calling it to Cassian, B says that he brought what Cassian asked for. And as the camera pulls in on Cassian's face, B repeatedly calls out, Cassian, Cassian, before switching to Kassa, Kassa. We get our first, flashback. I called it a dream sequence, but I guess technically it's flashback, dreams.
For all
I guess it's both. We cut to a sequence where Cassian's younger sister, this character's name, by the way, is Carrie, calls out to him. Carrie is a bright-eyed young girl. I've put her somewhere between ages maybe 7 or 8. Kassa appears to be just a few years older, maybe 12 or 13. He wakes from his sleep, rolling over to see Carrie, pointing off in the distance as she tells him that something is happening. There's something of note here in this sequence is that all of the kids in these sequences speak the native Kenari language, and more importantly, it's not subtitled. We've gotten that quite a bit. Like when everybody's speaking Huttese, it's usually like subtitled what it is.
But
if you turn the subtitles on in the episode, as we do as part of our research process, all it says, speaking Kenari. So, that this is a very cool choice. I was talking about the colonialism thing. This is kind of one more, or maybe the first aspect that we sort of are forced to look at it. Kids speak in their native language, especially when you fast forward. We've seen Cassian sort of in the bigger Star Wars context. My first thought was, oh my God, they've made him change his name from Kassa to Cassian. It's like bringing those kids over, like when they were adopting kids here and they anglicized their names. Oh, and by the way, speak English.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Conform.
Yeah, totally. All right. As Kassa and Carrie walk towards a riverbank, we can see a ramshackle encampment filled with nothing but other kids. It's a real Lord of the Flies looking kind of setup where the camp and their clothes look like they've been cobbled together from scraps. The oldest kids look like they might be, I wouldn't say any more than 18. And they all excitedly begin pointing at the sky as the sound of a rumbling engine grows louder. While turning their heads skyward, we see a freighter drifting into view with a trail of black smoke behind it. If you look really, really close, there's like this greenish, yellowish gas kind of pouring out of it. An explosion in the aft section startles the kids, and they watch as the ship floats past on a downward crash course. Oh, did I miss a slide? I think I did. That's unfortunate. Okay, so Carrie, the character Carrie, is played by actress Belle Swark, who's making her debut right here in Andor. And Kassa is a young fellow by the name of Antonio Vina. He has been acting since 2018, but has really only appeared in a bunch of like Spanish language shows.
Nothing.
Yeah, well, that's probably why I didn't put a slide in, because nothing we knew.
It's possible.
All right, as the ship passes overhead, one of the older girls waves, and she's waving and starts calling out to it, but she's quickly admonished by another girl, and she stops with a look of defeat. Carrie then hugs her brother as they and the rest of the kids watch the freighter disappear over a mountain, hearing the impact somewhere on the other side. And the big question here is, where are all the adults?
Go on. Removed for work labor force, maybe?
Well,
another, take the adults that can work and put them, because we're going to see something shortly here, what the Empire has done to this planet.
I don't want to get too far ahead, but like I said, the clothing, it's cobbled together from scraps of other things. And if you look at a lot of the state of their dress, it's baggy and it's tied on. It's, kind of very,
they can do
very kind of castaway kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not to say that they are castaways. I'm still undecided if they're,
I don't think they're castaways.
I don't think so either. We are going to find out a little bit more about them later on, and we are going to we are going to revisit that question though.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to the transport on Pharynx. Cassian nurses his injured hand, which has been bloodied from the fight the night before. Seems convenient that, oh, by the way, I made a point of this because how convenient is it that two planets in the same system have the exact same day and night cycle?
Maybe.
So they are orbiting the same star at exactly the same, like they would literally have to be on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird. It's fine. It's a, suspension of disbelief. But again, just to be cynical for a second.
Well, they're going to call that in pretty hard in episode 2, I think.
The day-night thing?
Yeah. Well, no, just the distance between Pharynx and Morlana.
Star Wars has messed with space travel, especially in the sequel era, where suddenly,
you're there.
Yeah, it's minutes, seconds. Yeah. We need to go somewhere. We just get there. We fly by map.
Mm-hmm.
All right. B asks Cassian where he was last night, but Cassian dismisses him, saying that it's not important. The droid opens a storage compartment on his torso, and Cassian removes what looks like a bandage sealed in plastic. B presses Cassian to tell him where he was, but Cassian deflects the droid by asking who came by the house while he was gone. Cassian then gets up from the bench that he was sleeping on, and he goes to an overhead bin in the forward section of the ship, and he begins wrapping his injured hand while B tells him that, well, Jezzy and Femi brought dinner along with some medication for Marva. He then adds that Jezzy later came back by themselves. Now, we don't actually meet these characters, Jezzy and Femi, but we do meet Marva later on in the episode, and without giving too much away, we'll say that Marva is basically his adoptive mom.
Yeah.
So here's another little onion layer that we're peeling back. Jezzy and Femi has got to be two presumably two lady friends of his, especially for Jezzy to come back later alone.
Mind you, they really dive in on it in episode 3, but the whole community aspect is really tight knit.
Oh, right. In Pharynx, in town. Yeah. I get the feeling that city is a lot. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a practical set. You can only build it so big. But I feel like the way that they've depicted it, that it's much larger than what we can actually see.
Mm-hmm.
As most places in Star Wars are, but like, yeah, it feels like it's a really densely populated place.
Yeah.
All right. Cassian asks him if anyone else was looking for him. Oh, I think I've gotten too far ahead. Yeah. If anyone was looking for him. And B says that someone by the name of Brasso was looking for him. When Cassian asks B what he told Brasso, the droid tells him that, it was Marva that spoke to him. And when Cassian asked what she said, B pauses, saying he's experiencing a data lag before blurting out that Marva said he was ruining his health and reputation with friends of low character, adding that sooner or later, Cassian was going to get himself into trouble that he couldn't talk his way out of. Ding, ding on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got the impression that data lag was B's way of trying to sort of preserve his feelings. Like, oh, I don't want to say what she said.
Yeah.
Because it's not really nice. And that's the first clue that we get that maybe these two characters are, kind of tighter than what we don't get to see them interact a whole lot.
No.
In this episode, but I get the feeling that, over the course of his lifetime,
they've kind of endeared themselves to each other.
Yeah. Because B has been around, like, as we will find out, for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When the droid tries to continue, Cassian snaps at him, saying that he's heard enough. With his hand now wrapped, he sits back down on the bench and, with a much softer tone, asks the droid to lie for him. The droid happily acknowledges that he can, and Cassian tells him not to tell anyone that he saw him or knows where he is. Well, sardonically, B replies, "That's 2 lies." Cassian says, "Well, let's have both." And B replies that, yeah, but he'll need to recharge at home. Cassian says, "Well, take your time," as he packs away his sleeping gear under the bench. And B's like, I can't come with you? And Cassian's like, well, not now. I don't have time. Dejected. And I do mean dejected. This is where we get that, like, oh, moment where, like, he kind of drops his head.
Yeah.
Dejected, the droid drops his head in disappointment, maybe even sorrow. Cassian, kneeling down in front of B, tells him, "I'm sorry, but he's late." And as the two face each other, Cassian notices a piece of scrap metal stuck in B's torso. It's like a piece of plumbing tape.
Mm-hmm.
Get the holes in it and everything. Tells him to stay still as he pulls it out like a dog's owner would pull a thorn from their paw. He places a hand lightly on the droid's body and tells him take his time before grabbing his coat and rushing off. Well, back in town, Cassian makes his way down the main street towards a central bell tower. The street is bustling, and Cassian looks nervous as he looks over his shoulder, kind of doing the, anybody following me?
Mm-hmm.
Arriving at what looks like a staging area for the scrap workers, we see a wall, and this wall is covered in like dozens of pairs of like really heavy gloves. When beyond the rock wall, the gloved wall, we see a pair of circular doors kind of spiral open and a bunch of workers kind of float in as if they're getting ready to go to work. They each claim a pair of gloves, and some of them board hover platforms, presumably to take them out to the scrapyard that we were just in.
Now, on that wall, there is one block that is missing its gloves.
Yeah. Is that a case of that employee is no longer with us?
Is it a case that maybe Cassian was that employee?
Fired?
Possibly.
Maybe there's room to hire somebody. Maybe it is, because at the end of the sequence, Brasso does tell him, put your boots on.
Yeah.
Go to work.
Because he implies that he has been working there at some point.
I don't know if it's he's working or it's Brasso's way, the get a job.
Straighten up, dude.
You know what I mean? Like maybe it's his way of saying just sort your poop out.
Maybe.
All right. Cassian spots his friend Brasso and gestures to him. Brasso stops to talk to him, telling him that he had come by to look for him the other night. Cassian says, "I know," and he immediately asks Brasso, what did he do after he left? And Brasso says, well, he was tired, so I went home, got cleaned up, and fell asleep. But Cassian says no. Launching into an alibi, he says, you came by for me, and when I wasn't there, you started home. You found me at the hotel bridge. We decided that we were thirsty, and you wanted to go to Cavo's. Presumably that's a bar. But I said that it was no good because there's too many people there that I owe money. Brasso, looking down at his friend, furrows his eyebrow and retorts, are you serious? And Cassian answers with a very earnest, yeah. Brasso, sensing that something is up, asks Cassian, who's going to be asking? But instead of answering the question, Cassian continues crafting his story, saying that Cavo's was out, but you remembered that you had a half a bottle of nog stashed at home, so we went there and drank ourselves to sleep. Brasso looks bewildered for a moment, and you can tell that he's not really sure if he's actually going to go along with it. Another onion layer.
Mm-hmm.
Cassian, staring up at the bigger man, implores him, please, I really need this. It seems like this is not the first time that Cassian has put Brasso in a position, and now it's Brasso's turn.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you insulted my choice of beverage, and as the host and provider, I was offended. You failed to gauge the irritation, the depth of my irritation. You rose to make your point more vocally, and I was helping you back into your chair when you fell. You were gone when I woke up. You've come here now to apologize. And Cassian chuckles as Brasso finishes with, and I accept your apology. Well, with the alibi now cemented, Brasso tells Cassian that whatever this is, when it's over, pull your boots on and get to work. You look like a wreck. And then he hops on a loaded hover platform, headed for the scrapyard. And as the platform pulls away, Cassian says, I knew I could count on you. But Brasso shoots back, I'm not lending you any money. Adding, tell your mother she can afford to put the heat on. It was freezing there last night. This whole sense that Cassian, has this small cadre of friends, associates, friends, I guess. I think that he's genuinely a friend.
I think so.
But I think, there's a tendency to sort of hold him at arm's length. Like, how many times are you going to ask for a favor? How many times are you going to borrow?
What are you dragging me into now?
Right. And I mean, I get the sense that Brasso is like, oh, you've asked me to do weird things before. Because that hesitation, it's like, oh, like, I'm not sure if he's actually going to go along with this.
Mm-hmm.
But, like a true friend, not only does he go along with it, he
finishes
the story. All right, this character, Brasso, is played by actor Joplin Sibtain. And if you're a fan of the long-running British series EastEnders, you might recognize him as Jack. He also played in the sci-fi original Night Flyers as Lomi's father. He's also the narrator in a British documentary series called Monster Ships. I'm not really familiar with his work, but I thought he was pretty good in this. We cut to an exterior shot of the corporate security headquarters of Morlana 1. Like the leisure district that we saw at the beginning of the episode, this cluster of buildings is right on the edge of a large body of water. So given that, reasonable assumption that Morlana 1 is maybe a water planet?
A lot of water, at least.
I get sort of trappings of Tipoca City. I mean, the buildings are obviously different, but like the structures are maybe like floating on the water.
Very pod-like.
Yeah, like almost like,
modular
drop building here.
Yeah.
Done. Inside the headquarters, Chief Inspector Hine, played by Rupert Van Zittart, reads the report detailing the murder of Kravis and Verlo. Standing rigidly in the position of at ease is Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn, played by Kyle Solar. Karn, knowing the chief was leaving the planet today, wanted him to have all of the relevant information before he left. But these two men could not be more contrasting. This whole interaction between the two of them, it's really, really telling. Like that whole, did you modify your uniform thing? Do you remember that line?
Vaguely.
He asks him, the chief inspector asks him, did you modify your uniform? Like, Did you do that? As somebody who's been in the military, there's this thing, and people who have been in service know what I mean when I say the LCF, the look cool factor. His uniform is more tailored. It's, more cut to his form, which in some ways is out of a sense of pride. But given what we learn about this character as the episode goes on, remember when the hostess said they just like to play at being cops?
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is the guy who, basically has wanted to be a cop his entire life, but no agency would hire him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
how he got here, I don't know how he got here, to be honest. But like, at the other end of that spectrum, you have Chief Hine, and to me, like, I mean,
he's been around the block once or twice.
Younger man, older man.
Yeah.
Guy who's like completely driven versus guy who just, I don't fucking care anymore. I see I see Hine, the chief inspector, as maybe somebody who's like, maybe he was in the Republic military or one of the other forces out there somewhere. And now he's basically, because this is a private contracting company, the money is always better in the private sector than it is in the public sector. So surely it pays more. But he's, probably an accomplished, officer of the law.
Yeah.
But I picture him as being the type of guy who's like, I'm 3 months away from retirement.
Yeah. I'm not rocking the boat.
Don't mess it up. Yeah. They could not be more different.
Yeah.
In some sense, they're almost like where the similarity is like, they're just like, if you picture them as the same person, but at different ends of the career spectrum, one guy's just kind of, young and eager, just getting started, and the other, nope, I'm on my way out. All right. So, the chief inspector casually reads the account of events as they are written, but he's really in no way motivated to chase any leads. While Karn basically finds it like unconscionable not to.
Yeah.
Chief Hine recognizes Kravis as someone that he used to know, noting that Kravis used to be a squad commander on Morlana 4. But Karn points out that, well, he's fallen considerably since then, as he was working as a sentry corporal at the time of death. By the way, that remark 4, that tells us that there's at least 5 planets in the Morlana system, because 1 through 4 and Pharynx, all in the same system. So at least 5 planets in the Morlana system. All right. Hine isn't surprised in the least that at Kravis's fall, going so far as to say that, he's lucky he wasn't killed years ago, going so far as to call him one of the most unpleasant people that he'd ever met. Well, with no witnesses and a paper-thin description of the subject, the chief calls it a tough case and says it comes at a bad time. Karn is certain that with several days and the required resources that he can close the case. But the chief tells him to stop. Not just to stop talking, but to stop the investigation. Standing up from behind his desk, he toggles a switch that closes the door and in no uncertain terms explains it away as a regrettable misadventure. The chief goes on to instruct Karn to concoct a suitable accident to explain the death of the 2 guards, further instructing him to make sure that whatever it is, that it happened outside of what he describes as the leisure zone, the blue light district. Karn protests, saying, but they were murdered. And Hines nonchalantly says, no, they were killed in a fight.
Which is true.
It is true. He then lays it out for the deputy inspector. The men were killed in a brothel, which they're not supposed to have. And it was the expensive one, which they should not have been able to afford. And they were drinking Revnog, which they're not supposed to allow. And all while on duty, which is grounds for dismissal. Well, the chief then concludes by saying that they just chose the wrong person to annoy. He goes on to further instruct Karn to make it look like they died trying to help someone. Don't make it look too heroic. And then he packs his briefcase. Turning his gaze back up to Karn, he notes that the deputy inspector looks stricken. And he says, are you absorbing my meaning? And Karn kind of purses his lips together and with a very furrowed brow lets out, I'm trying to, sir. Well, Chief Inspector Haynes then steps out from behind the desk to gather his coat and headdress, explaining that the reason that he called it bad timing is because today he's leaving for what he describes as an Imperial Command review, a review in which he's expected to give a report, which will include the current crime rate. He says that if Karn should ever find himself in the position of having to give the same report, that the goal is to do so with brevity. Because the less time that the Empire spends thinking about Preox Morlana, the more that benefits their superiors within the company, and by extension, everyone else who's employed with the inspection team. He then makes a point to add, which at the moment includes you. And to threaten him with his own job.
Yeah, don't screw this up or you're out.
Chief Haynes ends the one-way conversation telling Karn not to put his feet on the desk while he's gone, and let's have an accident report ready for when I get back. And judging by the look on Karn's face, that is the last thing that he's going to do.
Yep.
This whole interaction speaks to me, especially, again, given what we find out about Karn as we go on. You know the expression, give them enough rope and let them hang themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's, I guess I could say it this way. I sense a great disturbance in the force with this one.
True.
All right. So our two,
You did point out there that there's no further reference to, was it Revnog?
Revnog.
Could that be the same Nog?
I'm sure it is. Oh, I'm certain it is. Revnog. Again, did I look that? Yeah. No reference to Nog, no reference to Revnog. Presumably it's just the fancy way of saying, booze. Revnog. I bet you it's creamy.
Maybe
it's like the stuff I make at Christmas time.
With blue milk.
My moose milk. Moose milk for everybody who knows.
Blue milk and vodka.
Blue milk. Hey, we don't get blue milk, but we do get blue something else. I'm going to talk about that later on. This weekend sequence, we're introduced to two characters, Chief Inspector Haynes. This is Rupert Vansittart. You may remember him from Braveheart, where he played Lord Bottoms. He also appeared in Cutthroat Island. You remember Cutthroat Island, the Gina Davis pirate movie? Played Captain Perkins. And more recently, he was Jon Royce in Game of Thrones.
Not Jon Rog.
No, Jon Royce. Deputy Inspector Karn, as I said before, played by Kyle Seller. He played Korsunski in Anna Karenina, as well as Scotty McNeil in You, Me, and the Apocalypse. And for any younger viewers or listeners out there, he is the voice of Dante in the animated series 101 Dalmatian Street. I don't know who that is. Is that a dog?
You would assume so.
I don't know. Maybe it's
101 Dalmatians to choose from.
Okay. Isn't it 102?
Yeah, I think they're up to
100. It is. Yeah. All right. Back on Pharynx, Cassian walks into a store with a round facade. I tried to translate it, and I don't know. It kind of tapers, trails in and out, and it's not really a clear shot. It is Aurebesh. The first word, I can't make out all the letters. It ends in ARD, and then the second word is on. The third word is conversion, and then it's OD something. It's hard to make out. Inside the store, there's a man behind the counter who's serving a customer. The customer is not human, though, and so the storekeeper, Tim Carlo, addresses the customer through an interpreter droid. Ignoring Tim, Cassian walks past the counter on his way out to the backyard. Tim looks up from the counter, seeing Cassian, and says, "She's out in the yard." In a workshop behind the store, a woman lays on the floor, and she's cutting a component from an engine that's hanging above her on a hoist. The woman is Bix Colleen, and this, I guess, is her shop. To get her attention, Cassian raises the hoist, and without even looking at him, Bix says, "I'm busy." Sheepishly, Cassian says, "I'll be quick." And she gets up, lifts her welding helmet, now visibly annoyed. She's like, "What?" Okay. I get like romantic vibes here. Like that they may have been paramours at one time.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of history. Yeah, there's a tension in the air, like right from the get-go, and it kind of goes back and forth between the two of them that they're still kind of friendly, but there's this unwritten sort of like, I'm still mad at you.
Yeah.
Without Cassian goes on to Cassian goes on to ask Bix about a secret friend that buys ship components from her. Specifically, he asks how fast she can reach him. Without answering, Bix asks Cassian, what happened to your face? He says that he fell, and Bix laughs at him when she says, on what, a jealous husband? Another onion layer.
Yep.
Cassian presses Bix, saying that he has something to sell, and he asks her how soon can he get here. But Bix casually says that she wasn't planning on contacting him until the end of the month. With a hint of desperation now creeping into Cassian's voice, he says, no, this would have to be now. And that catches Bix's attention. As she finally looks at him saying, you know, it doesn't work that way. Not for one item. She says that she always bundles items together to make it worth it for both of them. Well, Cassian prods her a little bit more, saying, come on. Not phased and not willing to budge, she tells Cassian that a TAC Corvette is coming in later in the week to be scrapped, and she's been told that there will be a rack of Imperial targeting units on it that someone will have forgotten to strip from it. She says that with that, plus the item that Cassian has and a few naval comm scans, that they'll have enough. Well, with his desperation growing, Cassian frets, I can't wait that long. Incredulously, Bix says, why? She pauses for a second before shooting Cassian a sideways look, saying, what have you done? Deflecting the... Yeah, go ahead.
She knows him.
Oh, yeah. So now for the second time now, this is the second friend in a row that's like,
what are you about to drag me
in? Yeah, exactly. Deflecting the question, Cassian responds that her friend will want what he has, adding, you said that he wanted to meet me. But Bix just kind of stares at him, and she says, well, so what is it? When he doesn't answer, she asks him again, what is it? And knowing that he's not going to get anywhere without giving her something, Cassian finally relents and he tells her that what he has is an untraceable NS9 Starpath unit. I'm not going to go into the details of that because that treads on another episode, but basically the NS9, we can think of it as a valuable piece of Starship navigation equipment that has some special properties that we're going to talk about in a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
He says that the unit's vector crystals and the Imperial seal are still intact.
Mint condition.
Bix's eyes fit as she asks him, how long have you had that? Cassian just shakes his head and says he needs to move it. Now, angry, Bix accuses him of holding out on her by hiding the NS9 unit. He tries to diffuse the anger by saying that he wasn't hiding it. He was just saving it. But she won't have any of it. And that she further accuses him of taking the unit from one of the ships that she won the salvage rights on. And that's a kind of a neat little detail because that really paints a much clearer picture between what is the corporate zone versus the free trade zone. Like I get the impression that like corporate zone, like on Morlana 1, only the company does business, where as we find out later, they talk about Pharynx being in their jurisdiction, even though they don't have a presence there.
Yeah.
Hence the little companies like Tim and Bix can operate in the free trade. He retorts, guess again, but Bix is still angry with him. Not your best move, she says, as she walks over to a bin, tossing the engine component that she just removed. While frustrated, Cassian says, so what? You want to call your guy or not? Turning to face him, Bix leans against the engine that she was working on, and she says, do you know how much that's worth? He says, yeah, it's enough to get away from here, to get out of Pharynx, someplace where he can lay low until things cool off, adding that he needs to relocate for a while. But Bix is still very angry that Cassian has somehow reneged on their business arrangement. But Cassian blurts out that she's been skimming off the top, so don't get emotional. Well, switching to a different angle, Bix tells Cassian that he's going to need an alternate plan, but Cassian straight up says no before she can even get it out of her mouth. Cutting her off, he says, I'm not going to sell it to you. Well, it's Bix's turn to sort of plea now when she says, come on. But Cassian retorts, I didn't hang on to this to have a partner, adding that I need every credit I can get my hands on. Well, just then Tim comes out from the store and he says, hey, are we bidding on the Wabani run tomorrow? So Wabani, by the way, do you remember that?
No.
Well, we've been to Wabani before. If you don't remember, Wabani is the name of the planet with the Imperial Detention Center and labor camp that Jyn Erso was remanded to in Rogue One. That's the planet where they bust her out of the back of that the big tank thing.
Yeah.
All right. When Bix answers, what? Tim repeats himself saying, there's a run coming from Wabani tomorrow, adding that somebody named Jeef wants to know if they're in on it. Bix answers Tim with a smile saying, he'll know when I'm ready. Cassian catches her smile and he looks over his shoulder. Tim meeting his glance. The two hold the look just long enough for it to be awkward and maybe a little bit tense. While turning back to Bix, Cassian suggests that she and Tim's relationship has now turned into something more than just work. And Cassian makes Bix promise him that Tim does not find out about any of this, presumably referring to their business arrangement, because I kind of get the feeling that Tim already knows, like just the way that Tim interacts with Cassian suggests that he may be just a little bit jealous.
Mm-hmm. And that'll come up later, too.
Oh, big time. Bix says that Tim would do anything for her, but Cassian shoots back. No, that wasn't my question. Pulling another component off the engine, she grunts back at Cassian. No, he knows nothing about any of it. Before she takes the part to a corner of the workshop. Cassian follows her to the corner and he takes her by the arm. Leaning in closely, he speaks very softly, reminding her that she told him her friend wanted to meet him, adding that he really needs this. There's an intimacy in this moment where you really sort of, it solidifies the idea that, yeah, these two were close at one time. And maybe on some level they still are.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second time that he said that he wants to meet me. And I get the impression that maybe this has been going on. This whole like fencing ship parts has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
I kind of get the feeling that Bix told her friend about Cassian when they were still romantically involved.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they're broken up, she's been sort of using that as like, I'm still angry at you, therefore I'm not going to introduce him to you.
Yeah.
Because why else would he, why would he repeat it? You said he wanted to meet me.
Yeah.
Okay, you're pretty eager, man. Like, but why hasn't she done it at this point?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think she's still a little bit upset with him. All right. And I think it's the tenderness of the moment that changes her mind, because she then looks at Cassian and says that, yeah, she'll let him know. Well, Cassian looks at her kind of longingly, maybe because he's lost her, or maybe because he knows that he's got to get out of Pharynx and is not going to see her again. But Bix pats him on the chest and she tells him softly, well, go and fix your face. Well, we don't actually see this character Jeef that Tim is talking about. So it's unclear if they are the same person or not, but there is a reference in Star Wars to a character named Jeef. And that comes from the 2019 comic Age of Rebellion Special Number 1. It's a one-shot with a bunch of short stories. In it is one story. It's called Stolen Valor, which centers around Big Starklighter and Jack Porkins taking a vacation on the planet Earth. It's a very kid-centric story. You can sort of tell by the way it's drawn and by the dialogue. But they encounter what they believe to be is an Imperial officer. Well, it actually turns out that this Imperial officer is actually a single mom spice miner who's impersonating an officer to take advantage of the VIP treatment and the perks at the resort where they are. Yeah, she says, what does she say here? She says, Big says, don't move, you Imperial scum. We've got dangerous weapons under these towels and we'll blast you if you don't come with us. Well, she throws up her hand saying, please, no, I swear I'm not really an Imperial officer. I was just pretending to be one for the VIP treatment and the free perks. I'm just a single mother of 6 who needed a vacation from her job in a spice mine. And then it's Biggs who says, well, if you have 6 kids, what are their names? And she blurts out, Brit, Blip, Flip, Jeef, Gerf, Bilf, and Arnold. Arnold is adopted. Listen, I just need a break and to be pampered for once. Haven't you ever felt so overwhelmed that you needed to get away and forget about life for a while? So it's age appropriate, or sorry, I should say era appropriate. That maybe this Jeef that we don't see could be
the same one.
Could be the same Jeef from this one-shot story. Anyway, it's not important, but it is kind of funny. So Tim is played by actor James McArdle, and James McArdle has already appeared in Star Wars. He was in The Force Awakens, where he played Niv Lek. He's also appeared in The Mayor of Easttown as Deacon Mark Burton, and also Life After Life, where he played a character by the name of Hugh. Bix Colleen, she's played by Adria Arjona, who played Danny Silva back on Person of Interest. She also played Jules Reyes in the sequel film Pacific Rim Uprising, one of the Jaeger pilots. Most recently, though, Martine Bancroft in Morbius.
Still haven't seen that one.
Just see it as a Marvel fan. See it.
Okay.
Don't put a whole lot of faith into it, but yeah, see it. As Cassian leaves Bix's workshop, Tim catches him at the back entrance of the yard. And Tim wastes no time in letting Cassian know that Bix seems upset. And Cassian answers sarcastically, oh, it's good to see you, Tim. Locking gazes, Tim continues, it seems like that happens every time you come around. Cassian scoffs as he goes around Tim, saying, I wouldn't worry. She's tougher than both of us. But Tim says he's getting tired of hearing that. Well, Cassian walks away smiling and says, then you better find yourself a less complicated woman. And as he rounds the corner, he looks back over his shoulder and offers a sarcastic, good luck with that. Like if this is not two dudes flapping their whatevers at each other, then I don't know what is. We do see Cassian leaving the workshop, though, and the Orabesh translated over top of the door is, in fact, Colleen. That's Bix's last name.
Yeah.
So it's definitely her workshop. So are they partners? Is she partners with Tim in this business? Is she an employee?
I think she would at least be partner.
They don't really say expressly if she is or isn't.
No.
But hey, she got her name on a building, so it's got to mean something.
Yeah, and she comes and goes as she pleases.
Yeah, which she will do later on in the episode. Yeah. At this point in the episode, we cut back to Kenari, where some of the kids are still watching the plume of smoke from the crashed ship as it billows over a mountaintop. And a large group of older kids are now gathered around a campfire while one of the older boys stands watch nearby. Kassa approaches the gathering with Carrie in tow, and he shoves her off to be with some of the younger kids so that he can join the circle. Another girl approaches from the river. She's carrying several canteens of water, and she begins to hand them out. One of the kids in the circle adds some water to a small metal bowl and begins stirring something within it. The bowl is then passed around the group along with a few other bowls, and beginning with what is described as the 16-year-old alpha female. So I said no more than 18. She is identified as being 16. And yeah, they describe her in the descriptive audio as the alpha female. They begin to adorn themselves in what I would describe as war paint made from wet ashes from the fire mixed up in the bowls. Kassa reaches for the bowl, but his hand is slapped away by another older boy. But the alpha female admonishes him, and Kassa is allowed to continue. Well, with a visible admiration for the older girl, he emulates her by painting the very same single stripe down his chin and neck. Meanwhile, on Morlana 1, Deputy Inspector Karn pauses outside of a control room. a pair of uniformed officers walking past startle him, and he takes a minute to sort of gather himself before he enters the room. Again, another case of decisions have been made. Remember that rope that we gave Karn?
Mm-hmm.
It's getting shorter.
But him getting startled, that's just like a little bit of a crack in the facade.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he presents himself, a very stiff officer, but behind that,
there's the, using the analogy again of having been in the service, there's the, the parade square warrior versus the guy in the field who actually does the job.
Yeah.
And this guy looks good on paper. I'm sure he was probably like, one of those top graduate types. He's probably really book smart.
Yeah.
And that actually, I think it's in episode 3. Episode 3 when they actually go to Pharynx.
2.
Yeah, you really get a sense of that between the interaction between him and the sergeant.
Yeah, Sergeant Mosk.
Yeah. You really see the contrast there. All right, the room is dark inside, and it resembles what I would describe as like a sonar room of a modern day warship.
Air traffic control.
Well, in this case, they're actually described as the Astro Traffic Control Officer.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, 3 of them seated inside, each one monitoring what looks like a radar screen. So standing over one of the control officers, Karn instructs the man to sift through some traffic data from the previous night. Spotting a small anomaly on the screen, Karn says, "What's that?" The traffic control officer filters out a bunch of the other data, but is unable to identify the ship. The best that he can come up with is that it might be something that he calls an Orlean Star Cab, or maybe a day van. But whatever it is, it's very slow. By the way, the Orabesh on the screen there, that was a tough one because it's backwards because of the camera angle. Says angle of attack. I'm wondering if maybe this radar screen was used in a previous show or will be used again for something else.
Maybe.
I can't imagine that there's a lot of attacking ships in regular air traffic.
Yeah, not a lot incoming.
Yeah. Angle of attack could also be a reference to like a dive angle or a climbing angle, just a vector, as it were.
If they see something on this angle, alert.
Sure. Karn is nonplussed that a ship with no identification just wandered into their space without anybody noticing. And the traffic control officer tries to downplay it, telling Karn quite matter-of-factly that, well, the nights get busy. And this is the first example. We're going to get more examples of this later on with 3 other officers. But like, talk about borderline insubordination. Like, this guy had there's no respect for this character.
But in the same vein, like the chief, he's like, I know this guy. He's a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Apparently the reputation will carry through the organization.
Oh, yeah.
And chances are he's not very respected.
Even
though he's like
the deputy inspector. He's not well liked. Not at all.
No.
Clearly he's done stuff to
get where he's got.
Irritate. That the contrast. Well, you've worked in a large organization. Management versus the bullpen, right?
Yeah.
Right. Management often does not know what's going on in the rank and file, and that's kind of the impression I get with him.
Yeah.
Well, Karn, he's not dissuaded. He tells the control officer that he's not sure what's worse, the fact that their borders are unprotected or the man's complacency about it. He then orders him to find the unidentified ship, when it left Morlana 1, and where it went. Well, the Astro Traffic Control officer puts up a mild protest, saying to Karn that that's going to require filtering the entire night's traffic records. Karn tells the man, well, if that's too much, you let me know. Adding that he's sure somebody else would like that chair.
Again, with that abuse of power.
Absolutely. But again, with the insubordination too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Orlean Star Cab, that actually goes back to a Legends reference back in 1993, the Star Wars role-playing game sourcebook Galaxy Guide 8. It's Scouts. It's not actually a cab. It's actually a scout ship from a time before modern hyperdrives.
Very bug-like.
It does. Well, it looks like a grub or some kind of insect-looking thing.
Like something out of Starship Troopers.
Yeah, very much like that. These ships crewed by 3 droids and 1 biological. The droids kind of handle the day-to-day mundane stuff, which leaves the pilot to sort of do other things. But this ship is like, it's said to be like ancient. Like when they say before modern hyperdrives. So like the Millennium Falcon has what's called a class 0.5 hyperdrive. So it's really, really fast. Most military grade ships have a ×1 hyperdrive. This one has a times what is it? I've got it here somewhere. Times 10, times 10 or times 15, making it like exceptionally slow. Anyway,
being older too, it would be like just like the Razor Crest, where it was
this would be older.
There's no tracker or whatever.
This would be older than the Razor Crest by like probably hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But because it's a Legends reference, well, I guess it's technically there is a canon reference for it as well. But
there is now.
Yeah. As for as for Davan, there isn't necessarily a Star Wars specific reference, but when you look up the term Davan, it's very British. Very British term. Davan basically could be thought of as a stripped down camper that's not really equipped for long trips,
just day trips.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Day van. So presumably something along those lines. It could just be like a pleasure craft of some kind. All right, back on Pharynx, as Cassian makes his way through the streets, he catches the attention of a street vendor. Well, the man confronts Cassian, saying that, I want my deposit back. And when Cassian tries to fast talk his way past the man, telling him that his money is already in play, we realize that Nurchi, the street vendor, has already been conned by Cassian. So one more example of somebody he knows that he's indebted to somehow.
This guy has a distinctly less friendly vibe, though.
Big time. Well, you know, they kind of, their interaction suggests that Cassian's pitched like, hey, I need an investor.
Yeah, give me some money, invest it, and I'll get you a return.
Because he makes something about the money's already in play. We're just waiting to see if whenever it is, the thing shows up.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe that could be another person like investing in, say, a bid for
maybe
whatever salvage is next to come.
Yeah, probably it's something to do with the ship parts. I mean, that's sort of a big sort of thing with this
driving factor.
Yeah. Well, it seems like Nurchi has been anticipating this very moment because he's not alone. A shadow looms over Cassian from behind, and when Cassian turns, he sees the hulking amphibian form of Vetch. Now, Vetch is a male Eurodel. Eurodels actually made their first appearance back in Star Wars The Force Awakens. Insulted by the show of force, Cassian retorts, seriously? But Nurchi is not backing down. He says, I'm not going to be like the others who let you float until they forget that you owe them money. Cassian turns to Vetch and he says, you let him talk you into this? Nurchi tries to keep Cassian focused on him, but Cassian demands an answer from Vetch. Continuing, Cassian says, since when do you take orders from Nurchi? And Nurchi is like, don't answer that. But Vetch, who is clearly a little bit simpler and probably sounds like a lot more kind-hearted, and also maybe just a little bit down on his luck, he said all I needed to do was stand here. And Cassian says, well, good, you keep at it. Now, Nurchi's threat is kind of empty now.
Yeah.
Well, Cassian takes the upper hand and he says, I'm going to do us both a favor and just not mention that this ever happened. And he takes off. Kind of leaving the two of them to sort of stare at each other, like, and Vetch is like, what?
Yeah, well, what else was he supposed to do? He's just standing there.
The guy's like, he needs a job. He's clearly out of work. But I mean, just his whole demeanor and the way that he interacts here, like, you're like, oh, you almost feel bad for him.
A little bit, yeah.
I do anyway. Well, our man Nurchi is an actor by the name of Raymond Anum. And man, there's not a whole lot on this guy. He did appear in a 2014 horror short film called Trouble, where he played a nameless gang member. But it looks like Andor is his first big appearance.
Nice.
Poked around a little bit further. I did find out he did graduate from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London with a BA in acting in 2019. So just breaking in. I hope he's got a long career ahead of him.
Mm-hmm.
Our Eurodel Vetch is played by a veteran tall actor. Now, this is twice recently we've had discussion about
extreme height
height actors. Ian White, who has been a tall character in a bunch of stuff. He played the Scar Predator in AVP. He was also the Predator in its sequel, AVPR. We saw him, and actually his features, you can see he was the last engineer in Prometheus, the guy that took the whatever it was that killed them. And he played another Eurodel, the same species that he's playing here in The Force Awakens, where he was Resistance Quartermaster Bolly Prindle. And last but not least, he was the giant 1-1 in Game of Thrones. Yeah, so lots of big roles for him. Well, meanwhile, back at Tim's store, Bix comes in from the yard and she grabs her coat, basically rushing to get out. And she doesn't even look at Tim. She's just kind of focused on whatever it is that's on her mind.
Yeah.
Tim says, "Where are you going?" And again, without making eye contact, she just says, "Errands," and then takes off out the door. And Tim at this point is like, he's kind of reaching the end of his rope.
Yeah,
like he's
got
like
some suspicions going.
Oh yeah, on. Like he kind of does the whole like shakes his head and just kind of watches her through the window as she runs away. And he makes the decision that he's going to follow her. Yep. Partly out of curiosity, I'm sure. But I do think that there's a jealousy component there. Like, absolutely. I legitimately think he thinks that maybe
she's
something
running off to meet Cassian.
Yeah, something is perhaps rekindling between the two of them. Well, Bix has a bit of a lead on Tim, and Tim doesn't actually want her to see him, so he hangs back just far enough where he can keep her in sight, but far enough away that, if he has to, he can still be concealed. But Tim is like laser focused, so much so that as he dashes down a long staircase, he doesn't see another man coming out from a building carrying a stack of metal boxes, and they kind of run into each other. And in the resulting kind of moment there where they kind of spin around, he ends up losing sight of her. Well, he tries to catch up to her, gets down to the bottom of the staircase, but there's an intersection there with like several branches, and it's too late because she's already gone, and he cannot find her. One of the buildings on the staircase there, before he runs into the guy, the Orabesh there, it says droid parts.
Mm-hmm.
So salvage is clearly the thing here.
Now this stairwell is going to come up in episode 3 again.
It comes up in
multiple.
Yeah. This is actually the same staircase that Cassian went down when he ran into Nurchi and Vetch. Yeah. Again,
reuse of sets,
but they actually make a point to say that in the descriptive audio that Bix runs down the same steps that Cassian just went down. So they're in the same
vicinity,
neighborhood.
Yeah.
All right. Bix reaching the bottom of another staircase. She enters a shop that's kind of tucked into the corner. The Orabesh above the door that you can make out, it says REPA, and then you get a wall. I presume that if you were to be able to see the whole sign, it says IR for repair.
Probably.
But I'm just kind of extrapolating that.
It'd be a good guess.
All right. Inside the shop, the man behind the counter looks up to see her. Recognizing Bix, he smiles, saying, "I haven't seen you in a while." And Bix returns the smile, saying, "Well, some of us have to work." This is so grounded, the small talk, though. Like,
yeah, little jabs here and there.
Are you working hard or are you hardly working? The man says, "What are you looking for?" And taking a quick glance over her shoulder, she looks back at the man and she's like, bending mesh filter. And this is another cool one here. Did I do this? Let me just double check here. Did I slot this in here? 46, 47. Oh, I'm going to come back to that. Okay. I am going to come back to it. Bendine is a starship manufacturer. They made a ship called the XR-12, and it's described as being smaller than an escape pod. And apparently one of them ended up in Watto's junkyard. But I'm going to come back to that. So the man looks up hesitantly before turning back to Bix, and he tells her, check the yellow racks at the back, adding that she might have to dig a little. And she nods as she heads towards the back, thanking the man on her way. That sequence, again, this whole sense of like the imposition that people are being put in. She says that she doesn't make the call, sort of for single items.
Yeah,
that she wasn't going to make
saves
the
up
call
for a month
until the end of the month. Now he says, I haven't seen you in a while, but even still, when she says bending mesh filter, I mean, that's clearly a code.
Yeah.
Did you see the look on his face? He does he stares off at the ceiling like, and you think like maybe he's not going to go for it. Okay.
Well, you'd think you wouldn't want constant traffic going in and out of this location.
Because
it's hidden for a reason.
No, yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, adding that she might have to dig a little. She nods as she heads towards the back, thanking the man on her way. Now, outside in the backyard, Bix passes through a courtyard. It's filled with like spools of wire and conduit. And at the back of the yard, she crawls out of sight when she kind of weaves her way behind several hanging spools of wire. At the same time, the camera pans upward to a silo with what looks like some kind of radio antenna attached to it. We cut to an interior shot of the silo where Bix is seen climbing up a ladder. And at the top of the ladder, just below the rim of the silo, she turns her attention to a junction box that's fixed to the interior of the silo. Inside the junction box, there's basically a tangled mess of wires and what looks to be a rudimentary keyboard with like 4 or 5 keys. And she sticks her hand in the box, manipulating some of the wires, I guess. And that switches something on, and we get this sequence of lights comes on. And then she pulls out a concealed earpiece. Well, she hooks her arm up against the ladder, puts the earpiece up to her head, and she starts hammering out something on the keys. And as she's typing away and the camera starts pulling away, we get this distinctive sound reminiscent of like some of the droid languages we've heard before, along with this like rhythmic electronic beeping. And she's making the call, as it were. All right, our 2 people in the store. We have the young fellow there whose name is Wilmon. He's played by young Mohamed Bahir, who played the young Morgan Carey in Mariah, the Diva, the Demons, the drama. And the father, whose name is Salman Park, is played by Abin Galia, who was Oedipus in the Rome miniseries. And most recently, he played Zaman Isaiah in Peacemaker.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, so I want to go back to the bending thing, the mesh thing. So I couldn't, when you look up XR-12, the bending the ship manufacturer, the only thing that I can find is that they made this one ship. Like there's no, like, I don't think they made anything else, just this XR-12. And so when you look up XR-12, there's nothing. So other than the fact that the XR-12 is described to be smaller than an escape pod, and that one of them landed or is in Watto's junkyard. So that kind of took me down the rabbit hole, and here's what I came up with. I think that what we are seeing here is what I think is the XR-12. It is pod-like.
Very pod-like.
Pod-like, yeah. It's small, and it is, I mean, it's there. It's in Watto's yard. And the reason that I think that this is a good match for it is that it's actually a reuse of the EVA pod from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And as you're looking at it there, I mean, that clearly fits the description. Smaller than an escape pod. Like it's like a one
arms on the front.
Yeah, little thrusters on the side. I don't know if I'd call it a ship though.
Yeah, more like a personal vehicle.
Yeah, I'd just call it a pod, but
space bike.
Interesting though, like that it's a straight up reuse of another movie.
Mm-hmm.
We see that all the time, but I wasn't actually aware of this until putting this episode together. That this actually was a thing. But anyway, that's my best guess on the bending connection. So cool little nugget that I had to dig for, but hey, it is there. All right, so back on Morlana 1, Deputy Inspector Karn moves to execute his plan. Choosing to completely ignore Chief Inspector Hine, Karn enters one of the security bullpens to address the 3 officers that are working there. And spotting their superior, the female officer, she rushes to get back to her console, telling her co-workers, "Look alive." Now, one of the officers, who just happens to be eating a dish of blue noodles, shoves a mouthful in before saying, "Is he even allowed to approve overtime?" Again, the mundane, like, dude's eating at his desk, right? Yep. Like, oh,
he's having a work lunch.
Yeah. The other male officer says, "Well, that's his problem." And the first guy says, "Well, not if we don't get it," referring to the overtime. Stepping up to the bullpen, Karn barks at the 3. Pharynx. Well, the middle officer acknowledges that they have been working on it, but they don't have any information on Kenari human males. They tell him that what they do have is a 6-year-old imperial census. Well, Karn dismisses that because, in his words, 6 years, that's an eternity. Well, the female officer says there just isn't a lot of information on Kenari because it's an obscure planet. Obscure. And we're going to find out how obscure it is later on.
Mm-hmm.
But Karn says, well, that should make it easier. He instructs the 3 officers to put the word out and the vague description on Pharynx. And one of the officers reminds him that Primor security doesn't exactly have a presence there. Rhetorically, Karn asks, is it not under our jurisdiction? And the officer says, well, technically. Karn, now frustrated with the 3 officers, says, we are simply asking for some information. And when the female officer asks him if he's ever been there, he raises his voice and says, what difference does that make?
This is another one of those, management not knowing what the rest do.
Absolutely. And she's like, she's not even looking at him. Like, she can't even look at him in the eye. She's like, well, they have their own way of doing things there. Well, reaching the end of his rope, Karn shouts at them, this is the murder of 2 Primor employees. And like, it's a pin drop bink moment. Like, everybody in the office kind of, huh?
Yeah.
For a brief second. But he quickly regains his composure, and then he orders them to put out a blanket bulletin saying, Kenari men wanted for questioning, adding, slam their channels, flood it. Turning to leave on his heels, he says, set up a desk to monitor anything that comes through here, that comes in, before shouting at them, let's go. Wow, he's committed.
Yep.
He's committed. He's, as we would say, he's launched.
And he's launching it in a vocal fashion. Like the chief said, make it an accident. We don't need this out there right now. And he's just spreading it everywhere.
In his defense, and I know that we're meant to not like this character, but in his defense, he is acting on his conscience.
True.
He says it's unconscionable. I mean, that happens later, but it's unconscionable to him that the death of 2 employees goes
swept under the rug.
Sure, that it's covered up, that it's not properly handled, and he can't do it. And in that sense, I mean, I don't like him, but I respect that choice, even though it's maybe not going to work out for him.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back and talk about the food thing now. We've seen food items come up before in our shows. I don't think we've seen it really come up this way, though. The dish that that officer is eating is glow blue noodles. This is a dish that first appeared in the junior novel Pirate's Price, published by Lucasfilm Press in 2019. But that same year, the actual recipe appeared in the official Black Spire Outpost cookbook, which is the cookbook from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge theme park.
Nice.
Now, in the book, it is attributed to the gourmet chef Gourmanda. Now, this is probably the most obscure, deepest, most wackiest, craziest lore connection in the entire episode, and I kind of howled when I saw it, because I knew immediately what they were referring to. Actually, we talked about this just recently. Remember the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Vaguely.
Have you watched it yet?
Not completely.
Not completely. Okay. Gourmanda, if you don't remember, is the four-armed female host of the cooking show that Chewbacca's wife Mala is watching during the holiday special. Gourmanda, of course, played by the legendary Harvey Korman.
Stir whip, stir wah!
Now that is a deep dive.
Yeah, I mean, is it cool? In a way, yes, it is. I mean, Gourmanda to be canonized in print form in the cookbook is one thing. But to have this dish show up in Andor, and it's a real dish, you can make it. It's a real noodle dish. It uses some kind of tea to basically dye your noodles blue. There's all kinds of people have posted all kinds of photos. Hey, I made Gourmanda's glow blue noodles. But anyway, glow blue noodles.
There you go.
Yeah, Star Wars Holiday Special.
Stir whip, stir wah!
I miss Harvey Korman. Such a great comedian. Okay, getting back to the seriousness now here. Back on Pharynx, we find Cassian at what appears to be a used shipyard. And I say that because if you look at the perimeter of the two rows of ships that are parked there, look at the pennant flags hanging there. Does that not scream used car lot?
Yes, it does.
I love it. By the way, there's a lot of expensive hardware here for a used car lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that in a minute. All right. A burly man with two Carillion hounds approaches the ship that Cassian had used the night before. And the man looks nervous as he looks back over his shoulder. So there you go. Guy works at a used car lot. The implication here that, okay, you can take it. You know what I mean? Here, taking a car off the lot and going and doing some whatever you're going to do with it.
Maybe it's a rental lot.
I never thought about that. Rentals.
Ship rentals.
Maybe. I doubt it, though, considering the hardware that's sitting there.
Yeah.
All right. Looking up the dog handler, whose name is Pegala, asks Cassian, what do you think you're doing? Cassian remarks he forgot something, and he's just finishing up now. Well, Pegala remarks that he is in the office, surely referring to the lot owner, his boss. Cassian says, I refueled it, just like you told me to. But Pegala spots something in Cassian's hand and asks, is that the ship's ID chip log? We would just call it a transponder, the IFF, the black box, as it were. The thing that allows other ships to detect you on radar, the thing that they need, why they couldn't detect him in the traffic control center.
Removing the evidence of where he went.
Well, there is that minor detail. Cassian remarks casually that it's the old one, and now he's presently installing a new blank one. Well, just then a loudspeaker squelches, and the angry voice of Pegala's boss, a character by the name of Zorby, rings out asking, "What's going on out there?" And Pegala toggles a comlink on his jacket, telling him that he thinks that I think the yard rats are back, as he stares at Cassian. Well, the loudspeaker crackles to life again, and Zorby barks, "Get those hounds to start earning their keep. There's a customer out front." Well, Pegala turns back to Cassian, asking why he's changing the chip log, saying you're going to get us in trouble. And Cassian, just super casual, I didn't like the way it was running last night. And, he says, so you're doing me a favor? And Cassian responds, leave it better than you found it. Well, Pegla shoots back, the way you always do, the Cassian way. And it's very seething the way that he says it. And this is the third, fourth person that he's had a previous relationship with that he's now crossed.
Yeah.
But this one is different in the sense that Peglas tells Cassian to finish what he's doing. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know what this is. Leave and don't come back. I don't want any part of it, because no more deals, no more favors, just leave.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a bridge burned, like in grand style, I might add.
Yeah.
All right, whistling for the two hounds, Pegla walks away, leaving Cassian to his own thoughts. I'll turn our attention for a minute to the hardware sitting here in the yard. I pored over this, man, and it was hard. Some of it's quite obvious, actually.
It's not so much.
It's a really dense shot, and there are no less than 9 ships in that shot. I know it doesn't look like that, but there are 9 ships in there, of which I could identify 4 of them. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the one in the foreground, and I'm almost certain that we've seen it before.
It's got almost a silhouette of a snow speeder, but
you know what it reminds me of now that I'm looking at it? It kind of reminds me of the without the wings, but the U-wing from Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me, the angle of the canopy reminds me of the U-wing. All right. If anybody out there who is watching this knows what that class of ship is, please drop it in the comments, because I feel absolutely foolish. I feel like I've seen this before, and for whatever reason, it escapes me. But we do have, on the one row, we have a Y-wing fighter. Coincidentally, that Y-wing is missing its engines, which kind of lends credence to the idea that maybe that ship that Cassian borrowed is using the engines from that ship. The other thing is, further down in the lot, one of the ships that I could not identify also has a Y-wing style engine on it. So the idea that they are cobbling together,
taking pieces and making what they will.
We get just the corner of sorry, I should say we get a WTK 85A Interstellar Transport, or more commonly known as Ochi's Legacy. That was the ship Ochi of Bastoon from the sequel trilogy. We have the Lancer class pursuit craft, the most famous one of those being the Shadowcaster. We actually saw that ship in The Mandalorian. It was parked on the ground at Navarro. We could see it through the canopy of the Razor Crest at one point. Up in the top corner, there's a better shot of it later on in another episode, but it is there, and I knew what it was. That is a VCX 100 light freighter, the most famous one, of course, in Star Wars, the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels.
No fan service whatsoever.
No, none at all. There is another like Carillion style Millennium Falcon looking cockpit there on one of these ships, and I don't know what it is. Same as the thing beside it with the Y-wing engines. I don't know what that is, but man, I'm a ship guy. I love ships. So this was a pretty cool. It was a bit of a glory shot for me. I'm like, ooh, I like this one. All right, so getting back to the matter at hand here, we get a mystery. We get a mystery in this scene. Who's the voice? Who's Zorby? I don't know either. But I have a suspicion. We've had mystery people before. You know how we swore up and down that Quarren was
Vincent D'Onofrio.
That voice of Zorby, does it not sound an awful lot like J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson?
Maybe.
What's going on out there? I can't say for certain, and I have no way of knowing, because Zorby does not even appear in the credits. And the only reason that we know the character's name is Zorby is that he's identified in the subtitles. Pegla, on the other hand, is veteran actor Kieran O'Brien. Longtime watchers of Coronation Street may recognize him as Craig Lee. And he also played Alan Vest in the Band of Brothers miniseries, amongst many other things. Most of it British television, but he's been around for a long time. All right, mystery actor. I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe we won't.
Maybe we won't. Maybe
Who
we
knows?
will.
Who knows?
We're still waiting on confirmation for that Corrin.
I know. It's the same thing too. Like all the stormtroopers that never get credited, but we find out later who they are. Flashing back to Kenari, the older children, now armed with homemade staffs, prepare to leave their makeshift camp. Well, Carrie sits on the stairs of her and her brother's tent as she watches. Kassa runs out from the tent and carrying his own staff, he's ready to join the band. A few of the younger children kind of hang back in the village while the alpha female leads the older kids off into the forest headed towards the crash site. Kassa runs to catch up, and Carrie, she follows him and she calls out to him. Well, the two of them have a small exchange in the Kenari language, and I imagine it's probably something like,
"No, you stay here.
Please don't go." And he tells her to stay. And I think, to me, it's like it's okay, I'll be all right kind of thing. But I mean, the look says it all. Like, this is the last time that he's going to see his sister.
Mm-hmm.
Kassa lingers just a little bit longer looking at his sister, and with a slight nod, he then turns and runs off to catch the group, leaving Carrie standing there staring after them. Cut to black. And that, sir, is our first episode. What do you think?
Not bad. After going through the review with you, it definitely it improves it for me.
I think so as well. I mean, we all kind of do, because we had 3 episodes to do this week. We split it up so that I took the first one, Hank took the second, and you took the third. So I'm sure, I know that I spent way more attention to my episode than I did the other two, because I knew that, okay, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you watch it under the like, again, the microscopic versus the macroscopic analysis of the episode pulls out so much more.
Yeah.
There are so many times in this episode that it's like, oh, this relates to something that we're going to see in episode 2 or episode 3. And it's really hard not to want to talk about it now.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it was presented.
No.
And that lends itself to what I said at the beginning, when you really need all 3 episodes because they just work.
They function as a
unit. They work together. Maybe not as well individually, but as a whole package, it's good. And I, again, coming back to it and watching it now, this is what, wrapping up my show notes. I've got 3 full viewings of the first episode under my belt now. And I'm sure if I was to go back and watch it a 4th time, I would probably get some more stuff out of it. I mean, the big takeaway for me in this episode is just the morality of the character, and the morality, not just for Cassian, but like the morality of everybody else around him, and all those characters that we meet, and what are they willing to do, and what are they not willing to do? It keeps coming up back and forth. But that's it for me. That is episode 1. Anything you want to close on?
Not that I can think of offhand here. Nothing that won't spoil future episodes. But,
well, that's okay, because we do have
more to go.
Yeah, we've got 2 more to go to get those out. And well, that again, that's the first episode. It's called Kassa. All right, everybody, stay tuned, because this is just our first step into the world of Cassian Andor and his journey towards the Rebel Alliance in our little review series here that we like to call Fandor. The titles are writing themselves. We'll be back soon with our next installment, so stay tuned, because we'll be back very soon.
Bye for now.
Bye for now, everybody.